All right, let's talk about a book that so many of us have on our shelves, maybe even by our beds, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. We tend to think of it as this timeless, wise guide to Stoicism. But the real story behind this book? It is so much weirder and way more fascinating than you probably imagine. Okay, let's get into it. So here's the mystery we're going to dig into. What we're looking at was never, ever supposed to be a book. It was the private, personal notebook of the most powerful man on the planet, jotted down for himself and himself alone. The fact that it even exists today is a total miracle, but it also begs a huge question. Have we been completely misunderstanding what it is this whole time?
So first, we've got to talk about the absolutely bonkers journey this text went on. Seriously, the fact that you and I can read these words today is nothing short of, as one scholar put it, an almost miraculous adventure.
Now this right here is the key. You have to get this. Marcus was not writing for you or me. He wasn't thinking about his legacy or trying to publish a bestseller. He was writing to himself. These were his private notes to self, which makes their survival across almost 2,000 years of wars, fires, and just plain old time, well, it's basically impossible. I mean, just look at this timeline. For centuries, the book just vanishes. It gets saved after he dies, thankfully, but then it disappears for over 700 years. Poof, gone. Until a bishop in the Byzantine Empire stumbles upon a tattered old copy and gets it transcribed. And then it goes dark again for another 500 years, until the single complete manuscript we have today is created. It's pure dumb luck that we have this at all. So, now that we get what a miracle its survival was, let's talk about what the Meditations isn't. Because the way we think about it today is loaded with all these modern ideas that just, well, they don't really apply. On the one hand, you have the popular ideas, right? That it's this touchy-feely diary or a perfectly organized philosophical textbook or, a book of inspirational quotes. But what the scholars say? It's a totally different story. They see it for what it was. Personal notes. The Greeks had a word for it, hyponymata, which were basically a record of his spiritual exercises. A rough draft for his eyes only. So where do we even get this idea of it being a diary? Well, a lot of it comes from this guy, the 19th century historian Ernest Renan. He had this very romantic image of Marcus pouring his soul onto the page. And look, he wasn't totally wrong, but that's only about half the story. And this is the critical difference. If we're going to call it a diary, we have to call it a spiritual diary. Marcus wasn't just venting about his day or writing about his feelings. He was recording his attempts to apply very specific philosophical rules to his life. Think of it less like a personal journal and more like a workout log for his mind. Okay, so if it's not a diary in the way we think of it, and it's not a book, what in the world is it? This, my friends, is where we get to the heart of what Marcus Aurelius was really up to. This is the big reveal. The Meditations belongs to this ancient category of writing called hypomnemonada, and this was a super common thing for educated folks back then. It wasn't about navel-gazing or expressing your unique self. It was a practical tool. You'd jot down quotes, thoughts, and principles you were learning so you could reread them, memorize them, and actually practice them in your daily life. And this is the absolute crucial takeaway. The point wasn't to create a beautiful, finished book. No, the act of writing itself was the whole point. For Marcus, sitting down to rephrase a Stoic principle, to remind himself of a core idea, to talk himself through a problem on the page, that was the philosophical exercise. The writing wasn't a record of the work, it was the work. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. His personal hero, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, literally told his students to do this. He said, this is what you should be writing down every single day. So Marcus wasn't inventing some new self-help fad. He was being a good student, doing the homework his teacher assigned. So what did this daily mental workout actually look like? Well, it wasn't just random journaling. It was a really structured routine built around 3 fundamental disciplines. Pretty much every single thing Marcus wrote can be traced back to one of these 3 exercises. Step 1, the discipline of judgment. That means seeing things as they are without layering a bunch of drama on top. Step 2, the discipline of desire, basically accepting what you can't change. And step 3, the discipline of action, always acting for the common good. This was his daily mental checklist. And what's really cool is how each of these practices was anchored to a core philosophical principle, what the Stoics called a dogma. So his practice of objective judgment, that was based on the idea that our opinions, not events, are what upset us. The practice of accepting fate, grounded in the belief that everything happens for a reason according to nature. And acting for others, that came from the core belief that we're all in this together, made for each other. So where did all this come from? I mean, this wasn't just a habit Marcus picked up on a whim when he became emperor. It was the end result of a lifelong, very deliberate education designed to do one thing: train a philosopher king. It all started when he was a kid, with his painting teacher Diognetus. This guy introduced him to the Greek way of life, a simple, tough lifestyle. He had Marcus sleeping on a hard bed and, get this, taught him to practice philosophy by writing little dialogues as a boy. Maybe they were just games, but they were planting these really important seeds. Then, when he was a teenager, his rhetoric teacher, Fronto, kicked things up a notch. He taught Marcus to be a sharp observer of people, to notice things he called the maladies of the soul, like jealousy and deceit, in the people at court. And, critically, through their constant letter writing, he got Marcus into the habit of self-examination and reflection. He was honing the exact skills he'd later use in the meditations. But the real game changer, the person who completely altered the course of his life, was Junius Rusticus. He's the one who hammered home that philosophy wasn't about sounding smart or winning debates. It was about fixing your own character. And here's the kicker. Rusticus gave Marcus his own personal copy of the writings of Epictetus. Scholars call this Marcus's real conversion, the moment he went all in on philosophy as a way of life. Okay, so let's pull all this together. What does this new way of looking at the meditations really mean for us today? What's the actual lesson we're supposed to take from this? Here it is, the big takeaway. For so long, we've treated the meditations like it's a manual of answers, a book of quotes to make us feel better. But its real value, its true power, is seeing it as a model of a process. We're getting a behind-the-scenes look at someone actively and privately working on himself day in and day out. The scholar Pierre Hadot just absolutely nails it with this quote. He says, "The goal wasn't to reach some perfect, enlightened state. The goal was to constantly rekindle that inner fire, to reawaken those principles that life is always trying to snuff out. It's a practice, not a destination." And that really just leaves us with one final big question. The true lesson from Marcus Aurelius isn't in his quotes, it's in his actions. It's a challenge to all of us to stop just reading philosophy and start asking ourselves, so what's my practice? What's my daily exercise for the mind? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.